to see any activity in real time on your phone or computer. Perfect, I said. And I want the footage backed up to a secure cloud server. Then came the most difficult part, writing the letter. I must have drafted it 20 different times, ranging from rage-filled accusations to cold, clinical facts. None of it felt right. "You're overthinking it," Samantha said one night as I crumpled yet another attempt. "Just speak from your heart." "My heart wants to burn their world down," I admitted. "Then say that." I shook my head. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. It's about finally being seen. The breakthrough came during a session with Dr. Morris, the therapist I'd been seeing since leaving the hospital. "What do you really want from them?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "I want them to acknowledge what they did. Not just at the hospital, but my whole life. And if they never do?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Then I want to be free of needing them to." That night, I wrote the letter that would be waiting for them. Not from a place of anger, but from a place of clarity. I detailed their decades of emotional neglect, the lies about my adoption, and their ultimate betrayal at the hospital. I included copies of the security footage showing them abandoning me and copies of the legal documents proving my adoption was legitimate. But I also included forgiveness, not for their sake, but for mine. I was releasing them from any obligation to me and releasing myself from any obligation to them. "I no longer need your approval, your acknowledgement, or your love," I wrote in the final paragraph. "I am whole without you." I sealed the letter in an envelope and gave it to James to place in the house when the time was right. The final piece fell into place when James called to inform me my parents had scheduled a visit to grandmother's house, ostensibly to collect personal mementos before the estate was settled. "They filed the paperwork with the probate court," he explained. "They're coming this Saturday at 2 p.m. Will Allison be with them?" I hadn't spoken to my sister since Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I had no idea if she knew what our parents had done. "Yes, she's listed on the court filing." I took a deep breath. "Then it's time." That Saturday morning, James placed my letter on the dining room table in grandmother's house. The security company confirmed the cameras were operational. Samantha and I settled in at her apartment to watch the feed on my laptop. At exactly 2:03 p.m., my parents' Mercedes pulled into the driveway. The plan was in motion and there was no turning back. Through the security cameras, I watched my parents and Allison approach grandmother's front door. My father looked annoyed, checking his watch repeatedly. My mother wore her charity event smile, the one that never reached her eyes. Allison hung back slightly, her expression unreadable. "The key isn't working," my father complained, jiggling the doorknob. "Did you try the back door?" my mother suggested. "I shouldn't have to try the back door. This is my mother's house." Allison corrected quietly. "Was her house." My father shot her a look before pulling out his phone. After a brief conversation, a locksmith arrived. I watched as he opened the door, had my father sign some paperwork, and departed. Finally, my mother said, stepping inside, "Richard, check if the silver is still here. I want to make sure Rebecca hasn't already emptied the place." The casual accusation made my blood boil. Samantha placed a hand on my shoulder. "Remember why we're doing this," she murmured. I nodded, focusing on the screens as my family moved through my grandmother's house. "Everything looks the same," Allison commented, running her fingers along the antique sideboard in the hallway. "Mother always did have good taste," my mother admitted, examining a crystal vase. "This would look perfect in our foyer." "We're here for your father's childhood mementos," Allison reminded her. "Not to shop." "Don't be naive," my mother snapped. "Rebecca is never going to recover enough to claim this inheritance. The judge will award guardianship to us, and then everything here will be ours anyway." "She's in physical therapy now," Allison said. "Her doctors say she's making remarkable progress." "Well, her brain injury is another matter," my father interjected, coming down the stairs. "The silver is all there, Margaret." I checked the master bedroom too. Nothing seems disturbed. Has anyone actually visited her recently? Allison asked. To see how she's doing? My parents exchanged a glance. The hospital staff have been very uncooperative, my mother said primly. Besides, you know how Rebecca is. She's always been so independent. Too independent, my father muttered. If she'd listened to me about that driving route. Are you seriously blaming her for getting hit by a drunk driver? Allison sounded incredulous. Of course not, my mother soothed. Your father is just upset. This has been hard on all of us. They moved into the dining room, where my letter waited on the polished mahogany table. What's this? My father picked up the envelope. My name was written on the front in my grandmother's handwriting. James had used an old birthday card as reference. It's addressed to Rebecca, Allison pointed out. Well, she's not here, is she? My mother plucked it from my father's hands and tore it open. As she began reading, her face drained of color. What? What is it? My father demanded. Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. He skimmed it, his expression darkening with each page. This is outrageous, he spluttered finally. Lies and manipulations. What does it say? Allison reached for the letter, but my father held it away. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Family business. I am family, Allison insisted, snatching the letter from his hand. She began reading, her eyes widening. Mom? Dad? What is this about abandoning Rebecca at the hospital? My mother collapsed dramatically into a dining chair. It wasn't like that. We were in shock. The doctors were so pessimistic. It says here you told them she wasn't your real daughter and you owed her nothing. Allison's voice shook. That you left without authorizing treatment. That's taken out of context, my father blustered. We merely explained that the adoption was complicated. Allison continued reading, her face growing paler. There's a link to security footage. She pulled out her phone and typed in the URL from the letter. For several minutes, the dining room was silent except for the tinny audio coming from Allison's phone, my parents' voices clearly stating I wasn't their daughter, that they owed me nothing, that they wouldn't authorize treatment. You left her to die, Allison whispered when the video ended. Your own daughter. She's not my mother began, then stopped herself. Not what? Not your daughter? Because according to these documents, she absolutely is. Allison brandished the adoption papers included with the letter. You legally adopted her. You raised her for 28 years. And then you abandoned her when she needed you most. You don't understand the complexities, my father started. I understand perfectly, Allison cut him off. I've always known you treated her differently. I thought it was because she was so self-sufficient, so competent. I never imagined it was because you didn't consider her your real daughter. My mother straightened, reverting to the haughty demeanor she used when challenged. We gave her everything. An excellent education, every opportunity. Except love, Allison finished. Except the one thing she actually needed. On the security feed, I watched my sister's realization unfold. The pieces falling into place. The recognition of patterns she'd observed but never understood. All those times you dismissed her achievements, she said slowly. All those times you made her feel less than. It wasn't because you had high standards. It was because you didn't think she belonged. That's not true, my father insisted. We always wanted the best for her. The best. Allison's voice rose. You left her with brain trauma and broken bones to die alone in a hospital. How was that the best? My mother stood suddenly. We need to find Rebecca. She's clearly been poisoned against us. That Samantha person has always been a bad influence. She knows about the conservatorship filing, doesn't she? My father realized, scanning the letter again. She knows we're trying to take control of Mother's estate. Is that all you care about? Allison asked incredulously. The money? The house? What about your daughter who nearly died? Of course we care about Rebecca, my mother said automatically. But we have to be practical. In her condition. Her condition that you made worse by abandoning her, Allison interrupted. Her condition that you're now trying to exploit to steal her inheritance. My father's face hardened. That's enough, Allison. This doesn't concern you. Doesn't concern me? Rebecca is my sister. Half-sister, my mother corrected reflexively, then pressed her hand to her mouth as if trying to push the words back in. Allison stared at her. So it's true. You really don't think of her as family. The realization seemed to physically pain her. She gathered the letter and documents with trembling hands. I can't be here right now. I can't be near either of you. Allison, wait. My father called as she headed for the door. I'll be at my apartment. Don't call me. I need time to process. This? She gestured vaguely at them. All of this. After she left, my parents stood in stunned silence. Now look what you've done, my mother finally hissed. You've turned Allison against us too. Me? You're the one who called Rebecca her half-sister. Well, she is. And now both our daughters hate us, and Rebecca is going to use this letter and that video to destroy us in court. My father paced the dining room, running his hands through his thinning hair. We need to call Gerald. Their lawyer. He'll know how to spin this. We can say we were distraught, not thinking clearly. The video, Richard. The video shows us perfectly calm, perfectly clear. We'll say it was edited. Deepfakes are everywhere these days. My mother sank back into the chair. This is a nightmare. They continued plotting for another hour, calling their lawyer, searching the house for valuables they could claim as family heirlooms, making lists of potential character witnesses who could testify to their parental devotion. It was painful to watch, but also illuminating. They never once expressed concern for my well-being. Never once questioned whether their treatment of me had been wrong. They were solely focused on damage control, on preserving their reputation and access to my grandmother's money. When they finally left, taking several small antiques despite Allison's earlier objection, I closed the laptop. Well, Samantha said quietly. That was exactly what I expected. I finished for her. They haven't changed. They never will. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Allison. We need to talk. Please. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The cafe on Cambridge Street. Whatever came next, I was finally ready to face it on my terms. The cafe on Cambridge Street was busy when I arrived, leaning on my cane. Allison was already there, sitting at a corner table, two untouched coffees in front of her. She looked up as I approached, her eyes widening at my still-healing facial injuries. Rebecca. She stood awkwardly, hesitating between a hug and a handshake. We settled for an uncomfortable nod. Allison. I eased myself into the chair opposite her. You wanted to talk. She pushed one of the coffees toward me. Black with one sugar. You still take it that way? I nodded, surprised she remembered. Thanks. I didn't know, she blurted out. About the hospital. About them leaving you there. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. And I did. Allison had many faults, but deliberate cruelty wasn't one of them. Did you read the entire letter? She nodded miserably. And watched the video. I can't believe they would do that. To anyone, let alone their own daughter. Not their daughter, I corrected automatically. Not in their eyes. But you are. Legally and, well, we grew up together. You're my sister. She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled back slightly. 28 years, Allison. 28 years of watching them love you completely while measuring out affection to me like it was a limited resource. Did you really never notice? She flushed. I noticed they were harder on you. I thought it was because you were the oldest. Or because you were so smart, they had higher expectations. They told the hospital staff I wasn't their real daughter. That they owed me nothing. My voice remained steady, but inside I felt the familiar ache. Those weren't heat-of-the-moment words. That was their truth. It's not my truth, Allison insisted. You're my sister. My big sister who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my college applications and stood up for me when I totaled Dad's car. I had done all those things. Because that's what big sisters do, even when they're jealous of the golden child. Even when they're starving for the love that's showered on their sibling. What do you want from me, Allison? She looked taken aback by the directness of the question. I want us to be sisters again. Real sisters. I've missed you these 3 years. And our parents? Where do they fit in this vision? Her expression darkened. I don't know. I'm not speaking to them right now. What they did. I can't forgive it. They'll pressure you to reconcile, I warned. They'll minimize what happened. Rewrite history. I know their playbook too. She managed a weak smile. I've had a front row seat to their revisionist history my whole life. We sat in silence for a moment, the cafe noise washing over us. Can I ask you something? Allison finally said. The letter you left them, what did it actually say? The whole thing. I took a sip of coffee, considering. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the document where I'd saved the final version. Dear Richard and Margaret, I began reading. I'm addressing you by your first names because Mom and Dad no longer feels truthful. Parents protect their children. Parents put their children's needs above their own. You have done neither. By the time you read this, you will have already tried to declare me incompetent. You will have already filed paperwork to control the inheritance grandmother Martha left me. You will have already begun crafting a narrative that paints you as concerned parents and me as an ungrateful daughter. Let me save you the effort. I am alive despite your best efforts. The doctors at Massachusetts General Hospital have documented your refusal to authorize my treatment. The security cameras captured your exact words. She's not our real daughter. We owe her nothing. For 28 years, I have tried to earn your love. I achieved academic excellence. I built a successful company. I did everything possible to make you proud. It was never enough because I was never enough. Not your blood. Not your real daughter. Grandmother Martha left me a letter explaining everything. My birth mother was her niece Caroline. The adoption was legal and binding, despite what you told the hospital staff. I've included copies of all relevant documentation. I've also included a USB drive with the hospital security footage. It will be submitted as evidence should you continue your attempts to control my inheritance or claim guardianship over me. This letter isn't about revenge. It's about truth. The truth that you couldn't love me as I deserved to be loved. The truth that when I needed you most, you chose to walk away. I forgive you. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. I release you from any obligation to me, and I release myself from any obligation to you. I no longer need your approval, your acknowledgement, or your love. I am whole without you. Rebecca Mitchell. P.S. The locks have been changed, and this house is legally mine. Please direct any future communications to my attorney, James Wright. When I finished reading, Allison was crying silently. That's the most honest thing I've ever heard, she whispered. And the saddest. I put my phone away. It needed to be said. They called me 6 times yesterday. Left voicemails about how worried they are about you, how they want to help with your recovery. She shook her head in disgust. It's like they live in an alternate reality. They do, I agreed. One where they're always the heroes of the story. What happens now? She asked. With the inheritance? With the guardianship claim? James is handling it. The hospital footage alone should sink their case. After that, I shrugged. I move on. I build a life without them in it. And me? Her voice was small. Is there room in that life for me? I studied my sister, my biological half-sister, as it turned out. The golden child who had benefited from our parents' favoritism her entire life. But also the woman sitting before me now, choosing truth over comfort, choosing me over them. I don't know yet, I said honestly. There's a lot of history between us, Allison. A lot of hurt. I understand. She nodded, wiping away tears. But I'd like to try, if you're willing. I thought of Grandmother Martha's letter. Of family being those who love you, not necessarily those who share your blood. Small steps, I finally said. We start small and see where it goes. The relief on her face was palpable. Small steps. I can do that. We finished our coffees, talking cautiously about neutral topics, her residency at Boston General, my company's latest projects. It wasn't comfortable yet, but it was civil. A beginning of sorts. As predicted, my parents escalated their efforts after finding the letter. They called everyone they knew in the legal community, trying to find a judge who would grant their conservatorship request. They attempted to access my medical records, claiming parental rights. They even tried to contact my doctors directly. None of it worked. The hospital footage was damning, and James Wright was relentless in protecting my interests. The conservatorship request was denied. The probate judge ruled in my favor regarding grandmother's estate. The house and everything in it was legally mine. 3 weeks after our cafe meeting, Allison called me. "They're filing for a hearing to contest the adoption," she said without preamble. "They're claiming grandmother Martha coerced them into adopting you, that they never wanted to in the first place." The words should have hurt. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Let them. The documentation is clear. The adoption was legal. "It's not about winning for them anymore," Allison said sadly. "It's about hurting you." "I know. I'd always known. How are you holding up?" I moved out of my apartment. "I'm staying with a friend from the hospital. I couldn't be near them right now. I'm sorry." And I was. Despite everything, Allison was losing her parents too, the loving, devoted parents she had known her whole life. Learning they were capable of such cruelty must have shattered her world. "Don't be. It's not your fault." She paused. "Actually, I was wondering, your grandmother's house is pretty big, right?" I smiled despite myself. "Are you inviting yourself to live with me, Allison?" "Just temporarily," she said quickly. "Until I find a new place. And only if you're comfortable with it." It was a big step. Bigger than coffee at a cafe. But perhaps it was time for big steps. "The East Wing has its own bathroom," I told her. "And I'm rarely home before 8 anyway." "Really? You mean it?" "Small steps, remember? We'll see how it goes." After we hung up, I sat looking out the window of my temporary apartment. Somewhere across town, my parents were plotting their next move, still unable to accept the truth of what they'd done. Still unable to see me as their daughter deserving of love. But for the first time since the accident, I wasn't defined by their rejection. I was defined by my survival, my resilience, and the family I was choosing to build around me. The letter had done its work. Not by changing them, nothing could do that, but by freeing me from needing them to change. 6 months after the accident, Dr. Chin declared my physical recovery complete. The last cast came off, the final follow-up MRI showed no remaining brain trauma, and my physical therapy sessions were reduced to once a month for maintenance. "You're a medical miracle," she told me during our final appointment. "Most patients with your injuries would still be in intensive rehab." I had good motivation, I replied, thinking of the letter, of my parents, of the life I was determined to reclaim. I moved into grandmother Martha's house, my house now, in early spring. The Victorian needed updates, but I left the bones of it intact. The intricate woodwork, the stained glass transoms, the wide porch where grandmother and I had spent summer evenings discussing books and dreams. Allison moved into the East Wing as planned. Our cohabitation was awkward at first. Too many childhood patterns to unlearn, too many sensitivities to navigate. But we established ground rules and respected each other's space. Slowly, tentatively, we began building a relationship based on choice rather than obligation. My business partner Samantha became a frequent visitor, as did Nurse Emily, who'd left the hospital to work for a home healthcare agency. James Wright joined us for Sunday brunches, continuing the tradition I'd shared with grandmother Martha. "You've created quite the family here," he commented one Sunday, watching Allison and Emily debate the merits of different medical specialties while Samantha set the table. "Chosen family," I corrected gently. "The best kind." My parents made one final attempt to reassert control. They filed a lawsuit claiming emotional distress, arguing that my letter and the hospital footage had caused them significant psychological harm. It was a desperate move, transparently vindictive. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, ruling that truth could not be considered harmful speech. In his written opinion, he noted that they had abandoned their daughter in her time of greatest need and were now seeking to punish her for merely documenting that abandonment. The ruling made local news. Former colleagues, distant relatives, and country club friends all learned what Richard and Margaret Mitchell had done. Their carefully cultivated social standing crumbled overnight. They left Boston a month later, relocating to Florida without saying goodbye to either of their daughters. "Are you okay?" Allison asked when we heard the news. "About them leaving?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I said finally. "I think I am." The truth was, they had left me long before they physically departed. Perhaps they had never really been with me at all. With the legal battles behind me, I turned my attention to the future. My tech company had thrived even during my absence, thanks to Samantha's leadership. Now we were developing new software inspired by my hospital experience, a communication system for patients with traumatic brain injuries who couldn't speak but remained conscious. "We're calling it Bridge Gap," I explained to Emily over dinner. "It tracks eye movement and brain activity to help doctors determine consciousness levels in non-responsive patients." "That would have helped you," she noted. "It would have helped the doctors," I corrected. I knew I was conscious. They didn't. The project gave purpose to my pain, transforming a traumatic experience into something that might help others. Grandmother Martha would have approved. As for Allison, our relationship continued to evolve. There were difficult conversations about our childhood, about the favoritism she had benefited from, about her own complicity in my isolation. But there was also healing. She brought home takeout when I worked late. I helped her study for her board exams. We discovered we both loved terrible reality TV shows and spent Sunday evenings mocking them together. "I never knew you were funny," she told me once, laughing at my impression of a particularly dramatic reality star. "You never knew me at all," I replied, but without bitterness. It was simply truth. A year to the day after the accident, I held a dinner party in Grandmother Martha's, my dining room. Samantha was there with her new boyfriend. Emily brought her wife. James Wright came with a bottle of expensive champagne. Allison invited a colleague from the hospital, a neurosurgeon with kind eyes who looked at her with unmistakable interest. As I looked around the table at these people who had chosen to be in my life, who had shown up when it mattered, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with my parents' validation. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, raising my glass. "To family. Not defined by blood or by law, but by love, by choice, and by showing up when it matters most." "To family," they echoed, glasses clinking. Later, after everyone had gone home except Allison, I found myself on the porch swing where Grandmother Martha and I had spent so many evenings. "Room for one more?" Allison asked tentatively, hovering in the doorway. I patted the space beside me, and she sat down. "Do you ever wonder where they are now?" she asked after a while. "What they're doing?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But it doesn't hurt anymore." "How did you do that? Make it stop hurting?" I thought about the letter I'd written, about the truth it had contained, about the freedom it had given me. "I stopped expecting them to be something they couldn't be," I said finally. "And I started building a life that didn't need their approval to be meaningful." Allison nodded slowly. "I'm still working on that part." "It takes time," I assured her. "And you don't have to do it alone." We sat in companionable silence, watching fireflies dance in the gathering twilight. In the distance, a car backfired, reminding me briefly of the accident that had changed everything. But instead of fear or pain, I felt only gratitude for the path it had set me on. The truth had nearly killed me, but it had also, finally, set me free. I hope my story resonates with those of you who have felt the sting of conditional love or family betrayal. Remember that family is defined by actions, not blood, by who stays when everyone else walks away. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story touched something in you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too can build a life filled with chosen family who truly sees them. Thank you for being part of my healing journey by listening to my story. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more powerful than the one we're born into.